Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with life coach Cindy Chavez. Today is Wednesday, August the 12th, 2020. It's 4 p.m. New York time, and wherever you are in the world, thank you for joining us for another episode of LOA Today, your daily dose of happy. And I'm happy to announce that Cindy Chavez's ebook, The Lovely Magician's Guide to Soulmate Success, is now officially a part of the app. Thank you so much for that gift, Cindy.
Yay! I'm very excited about that.
I'm excited too. And I know we've actually gotten a few hints that people are already reading it, which is a good thing. You know, people are paying attention to what's going on in the app.
Yeah, that little booklet, it's a little guide that's dear to my heart. And I've received a lot of feedback from people that have read it and then had some kind of breakthrough in their life. And so the more it can be out there, the happier I am about it. And so I'm very, very happy to have it in the app. That's great.
I'm looking forward to hearing that first story that comes through that says, well, before I even started to read the story, here's what happened. Because we've had that already happen with Daniel Mangana's Money Game book.
Yay.
One of our readers, listeners, wrote in basically say she just started and already manifested $500.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think that's the power of intention, because I know that I have people reach out to me and then decide to hire me as a coach. And, we set the calendar for their first session, which may be tomorrow, but it might be a week away. It might be 2 weeks away. And then something huge shifts in their life before we even get on the phone. And it's part of the reason why I kind of got the name, the Love and Magic Coach. Because so many people said, oh my gosh, this is like, you're like magical. Like as soon as I hired you, I hadn't even got on the phone with you yet. But it's not that. It's that person made a commitment to themselves.
Yeah. Right.
When somebody picks up Dan Mangina's book, my book, whatever book, they have made some kind of decision within themselves that they're ready to, to attract a soulmate or to make some money or whatever it is. And that is what causes the shift. It's that commitment, that inner intention that happens in the person. And that's a powerful thing to recognize, right? It's like sometimes we put those wheels in motion just by making a decision.
It's encouraging, actually, because so often we talk about and hear about and experience, well, there's all these blocks that we get in our way and it makes it difficult to manifest things. How cool it is to understand that all we have to do is commit to something and we start knocking blocks down just by making the commitment.
Yeah. It's an interesting idea that I think it is Gay Hendricks who wrote the book, The Big Leap, which is a fantastic book. I don't know if you've read it, but I recommend it. I read it years ago. I keep giving copies away so I don't have a copy now. I keep thinking, where's my copy?
I gave it away.
Or one of my sons has it or something. It's always, but I don't know if it's in that book or not, but I'm pretty sure it was Gay Hendricks that said that we have unconscious commitments to things. Like if we're experiencing something that we probably have an unconscious commitment to it. And it might be to being alone. It might be to being impoverished, whatever it is, there's some kind of commitment. And so that poem or line quote from Goethe that says, at the moment that we commit, that the universe conspires to assist us. Yeah. I think that's what this is. When somebody finally says, okay, I'm done with this problem. I'm going to hire a coach or I'm going to read this book or whatever. That's that commitment. So cool.
Well, I can tell you somebody who's made the commitment, because Jeffrey in our live stream posted first day. He says, congratulations and thank you. Perfect timing. I just finished a book and need a new one.
Yes. Excellent. Great.
And we also have a question. And today is Neville Day, so we're going to be doing more Neville today. But Josie has a question. She says, hey, Cindy, always a pleasure to see your smiley face. Question for you. From your spiritual knowledge, do you believe that art, i.e. music, writing, painting, connects us to higher dimensions?
Yes, I do. I don't even have to think about that. And I'll tell you why. The first thing that comes to mind is that, and I'm not sure what you mean by higher dimensions, but we'll see if what's going on in my head is relevant. And that is that there are 7 levels of energy and we talk about this, once in a while, with the lowest ones being that victim energy. We've all experienced all 7 levels, right? It's not like, ooh, this level's good and that level's bad. One of my early mentors said to me, he's actually Bruce Schneider, the one that developed the energy leadership system that what I'm going to say is based on. He said, there's no good energy or bad energy. There's just energy, right? Mm-hmm. So that energy level, when you're down in the dumps and you think everything's wrong and it's never going to work out and life sucks and, everything's against you, which we've all felt at one time or another, that's that low level. And as you climb up through those levels, it's kind of like the Abraham Hicks emotional resonance chart, right? But the top level 7 energy, is anything is possible. And that's like the level of creation. And I sometimes call it the Jesus level, because it's like, if we could stay in that level, we could walk on water. We could turn water into wine, right? But that is also the level that we are tapping into when we are making art, when we are making music, when we are creating something, when one of the clues that when you're there is you lose track of time, right? Like you might be writing or painting or making music or whatever, and it's like, oh my gosh, where did the time go? I can't, how did that happen? It was just noon and now it's 4:00 and I don't know where that time went. It's that level of energy. So yes, I think there's a connection, because at that level of energy, everything starts to come together.
Very cool. I like that. Also, we have a question, actually it's a request from Nash Ahmad, who says, please, a humble request. My mom is very ill. Please, can all of you send loving thoughts? Again, this is a humble request. So,
absolutely.
Yes.
We've had miracles happen while we were on the podcast with people that asked for
That's true.
Loving thoughts, right?
Yeah.
To hold a vision for them of healing or whatever, and then suddenly they didn't have to have whatever.
Dee was the last one that I can remember that happening with. Dee was hospitalized, and
he was in the hospital. Yes. Oh my goodness, that was awesome.
Right.
That was wonderful. So of course we will. Thank you for honoring us with that request. We will hold a vision of health and healing.
Absolutely. So with that as our background, let's get started going back to Neville Goddard, who we're revisiting after having done what did we say? We did like 9 of the books. Is that what it was? We did a lot of Neville Goddard books.
We did a lot of we exhausted all of the Neville Goddard books that we knew about.
Right.
But there are lots and lots of Neville Goddard lectures.
Right.
And so I think it was Nash that had sent me a message asking about a particular lecture. And when I read the lecture, I realized I didn't think it was going to transfer to the podcast quite as well as I'd hoped. And then in the process of reading the lecture, I found another Neville book that I didn't know existed and got really excited and thought, okay, well, let's dive into this. I mean, we'll give you some Neville.
Oh, and by the way,
compliments on Neville Day. So yeah.
I don't know if you saw, but Jeffrey said, I am envisioning a healthy mother walking around and back to her healthy self. So Jeffrey's on board as well.
Thank you. It's wonderful.
So we've done 2 parts to this book. And in the last part, not surprisingly, we were talking about the I am in conjunction with being healthy, which is, of course, the theme we were just touching upon.
Right.
And that's pretty much the way part 2 ended. I'm wondering where we're going to go with part 3.
Well, I think it's so important to recognize, and I'm glad you brought that up about where we left off last time, and remembering how powerful the words I am are. Right? I am. And what's so powerful about whatever we follow that up with.
Yes.
Right. So this is where we left off. We'll start right here with Neville saying again, Moses stated, I am that I am. Now here's something to always bear in mind. You cannot put new wine in old bottles or new patches upon old garments. That is, you cannot take with you into the new consciousness any part of the old man. All of your present beliefs, fears, and limitations are weights that bind you to your present level of consciousness. Ooh, that's really powerful.
Yeah, it's almost a burden
Right.
actually. When you read it, like, whoa, I got a lot of work to do here.
One of my earliest mentors, actually the person who turned me on to Neville Goddard, uh, decades ago, said to me, worry binds you to the problem in consciousness. And I'm reading this sentence now and I'm
Right.
thinking, oh, this is where you got this.
Yeah. No kidding.
Because he was a big Neville person, right? So your present beliefs, your fears, and limitations are weights that bind you to your present level of consciousness. If you would transcend this level, you must leave behind all that is now your present self or conception of yourself. To do this, you take your attention away from all that is now your problem or limitation and dwell upon just being. That is, you say silently but feeling to yourself, I am. Okay, so I want to stop there for a second because I
Yes.
think this is really important to recognize. And I've been trying to formulate in my mind a way to communicate it. But just the idea, and Neville's doing a great job. He says it over and over, but just those two words, I am, without following it up with anything. Because we always do, I am this, I am that, I am
Mm-hmm.
tired, I am hungry, I am happy, I'm sad, whatever. But just I am. There's an idea that says, oh, doing is work, being is effortless.
Mm-hmm.
And when we just use those two words, I am, that's talking about being. We don't have to follow it up with anything. And so I like that Neville is bringing this to our attention. He says, you say silently but feeling to yourself, I am.
And there's something similar to that in what are for most people common practices, because what he's describing there sounds very much like meditation.
Oh, I mean, I think it is meditation, right?
Yeah.
I mean, when we look at exactly what he's saying, he's talking about transcending our present situation, basically. But he uses the word level.
Yeah.
So level of consciousness and saying silently but feeling to ourselves, I am. Taking our attention away from all that is right now. I mean, that definitely sounds like where I go when I meditate anyway.
I was just experimenting in the last few days. I got, you know what heart math is?
Yes.
The Institute, and they have their little device, their inner balance device. I actually
Yep.
purchased that device. I've been experimenting with it for the last few days.
Excellent.
And I'm still trying to learn physically what it does. I know it keeps your pulse, it takes your pulse, but it does something else. And I'm trying to find out from them what it does. And they keep giving me, the mumbo jumbo. I'm saying, no, I mean, what physically does it actually do? I haven't found that part out
Yeah,
yet.
because it's trying to measure the coherence between your brain and your heart, right?
Yeah, from a clip on your ear. It's like, okay, come on, what's it actually doing?
Clip on your ear. See, there used to have one. It was smaller than my iPhone, but it was, you put your thumb on it.
Oh, okay.
I don't know if maybe they've gone to something else, but yeah, it's really cool. And as a matter of fact, I want to say years ago, but maybe a year ago, remember when we did a meditation on the podcast?
We've done a few of them, so you'll have to give me a little more than that.
So one of them was actually a heart math type of meditation.
Oh, yes, I do remember that we did that. Yeah.
Because what we do in that situation is we bring our attention, we think of something lovely that brings happiness to us. Mm-hmm. And at the time we do it, we are focusing our attention on our heart area.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is the exact same thing they teach. Yeah.
Yeah. Very cool.
Yeah. Well, I mentioned that because what they now have, of course, you have an app that you download to your phone when you're plugged into this thing. Okay. And on the app, they have what they call a mandala, which is really just this little graphic that expands and contracts at a rate that is supposed to match your breathing. So you inhale as it gets larger, you exhale as it gets smaller. And so that's how you kind of, tune yourself to the app. And while I haven't spent a lot of time, my longest session is like 5 or 6 minutes.
Okay.
But each time that I've been doing this, I've been getting into that zone, and the focus gets to be such that you really only have enough attention for that mandala. You don't have attention for anything else. So you really do get to the state that Neville's describing here, where he says, you're just being. Mm-hmm. Just being. That's all. There's nothing else. There's just being.
Now, do they instruct you, besides the breathing and watching the thing, is there any specific thought that you're instructed to hold in your mind or anything while you do this?
Well, they have guided meditations you can use while you're doing it. But for the generic version, what they suggest is just focus on your heart and focus on something that is a positive thought for you, something that feels good to you.
Because I was thinking, could you do this and use what Neville's talking about right now with silently, but with feeling, saying to yourself over and over, I am?
I think you probably could. Yeah. I think it would work very nicely. Yeah.
I think it would be awesome. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now I want one.
Okay.
Okay. So Neville says, do not condition this awareness as yet. Just declare yourself to be and continue to do so until you are lost in the feeling of just being, faceless and formless. When this expansion of consciousness is attained, then within this formless deep of yourself, give form to the new conception by feeling yourself to be that which you desire to be. So again, he's going, we have this catchphrase. I have it on my phone. Every couple of hours it pops up. It says, assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled. That's Neville in a nutshell, right?
Right.
So he's saying here that once we attain this expansion of consciousness where we are only aware of just being, this is when we give form to that new conception by assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, basically by feeling ourself to be that which we desire to be. Okay.
Right. Okay.
So he says you will find within this deep of yourself all things to be divinely possible. Everything in the world which you can conceive of being is to you, within this present formless awareness, a most natural attainment. Now, when I think of what he's saying right here, I just think of the word faith, because that's the definition of faith, is believing things that we can't see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right? And that's what he's saying that once we get there, I love the way he uses this phrase. He used it more than once already. Within this deep of yourself.
Yeah.
So, when we talk about, Josie asked the question about other higher dimensions. Mm-hmm. When we talk about that, sometimes we have this idea that we're going up or that we're going out into some other dimension that's apart from us. It's
right.
There.
Yeah.
It's out there. Or when people pray, Neville's talking a lot about God, and when people pray, they're like reaching out. Like in the 12-step programs, they talk about a higher power, right? It's outside of you. Mm-hmm. Neville's saying, no, it's deep within yourself.
Right. Very different.
Find it. Yeah. Deep within yourself. So.
Yeah. When you think about it that way, and you think about the word that often gets used in association with prayer, beseech. It almost becomes laughable. Beseech your conscious mind. Wait, hold on.
Right. So he says everything in the world which you can conceive of being. And I think that's important. It doesn't say which you can conceive of doing or which you can conceive of having.
Yes.
No, right. I think those things are attached to who we're being. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So he says that within this present formless awareness, those things that we can conceive of being become natural. The invitation given us in the scriptures is, and he quotes, to be absent from the body and be present with the Lord. Now, here's the Nevilleese.
The decoder ring. The decoder ring is out.
The decoder ring is out. The body being your former conception of yourself, and the Lord, your awareness of being. This is what is meant when Jesus said to Nicodemus, you must be born again, for except you be born again, you cannot enter the kingdom of heaven. That is, except you leave behind your present conception of yourself and assume the nature of the new birth, you will continue to outpicture your present limitations. And, it's really interesting. I was thinking about someone that I knew years ago. I don't know what brought them to my memory or this particular thing, but I watched them over a period of time go from really having nothing and really struggling to having a little more and a little much better, and then, much better, and then a better job, and then more things. But that person continued to say, like, you can never get ahead.
Wow.
You never get ahead. And I remember one day saying, I can't believe that I still hear you saying a person can never get ahead, because I knew you when you were struggling to find a place, and then you were in an apartment, and now you own a house. And I knew you when you didn't have a job, and then you had a terrible job, and now you have a great job. Like, how come you can't see these things? And, things kept, even though there was this upward climb in how this person was experiencing life, or what I was watching them do, they were still complaining that it was impossible to get ahead. And so their road to better and better was still full of struggle and right? And I thought, how much easier and probably how much further they would have gotten along if they would have had their focus on how much better things were getting. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I read this about, your awareness, you have to leave that part behind. And I can't remember who said it, but somebody said that most people, all they talk about is yesterday's news.
It's true.
Right? And so when he said here, except you leave behind your present conception of yourself and assume the nature of the new birth, you will continue to outpicture your present limitations. And that's what I see when we're telling that same old story. Yes. You have to change the story and leave behind that conception that we have of ourselves.
It's funny, we hear things like what was used here. It's sort of a metaphor that he's using, the body being the former conception of yourself, the Lord being your awareness of being, and how you have to leave the body behind in order to join with the Lord, which is conscious mind. So it sounds like a nice, lovely metaphor. We rarely take the time to remember, this metaphor actually points to something that's really been going on in my life that I've been hanging on to for ages that I won't let go of.
Right, exactly. And, we do that with self-descriptions that sometimes seem really mundane, like they don't seem super important, right? Like something people might say about themselves all the time. Mm-hmm. We've talked about this before, like, I'm not good at remembering names. Yes. Or I'm terrible at math. Or, just there's a lot of cliche things that might come up. Just I don't like red wine. I like white wine. Maybe just haven't tried a red one that you did like, right? Maybe how much in the last 5 years of your life have you decided you were going to get better at math? What conscious effort have you made and action have you taken to say, I'm going to start remembering names and putting them with faces, right? Because you hear people say, it's like, I'll never forget a face, but I have no idea what your name is, right?
And I've done that same thing.
And so we all do this, like we tell these stories over and over and over, and I feel like our subconscious goes, okay.
Sure.
I mean, our subconscious doesn't ever make judgments.
Nope.
Right? The subconscious doesn't say, don't tell that story. The subconscious just says, all right. I mean, that's what you're telling. It's like a computer with a program. Okay. Mm-hmm. That's what we'll do then.
Program Neville, received.
Yeah.
And in receiving that program, there's an important little thing in there that I want to touch upon. You mentioned people who say, I'm not good at math. Or maybe they, like you said, they think about setting an intention to get better. They may or may not do that, so forth. But there's another side to that too. People like me, I am good at math. And I easily get frustrated with people who don't do well with math. And it gets to the point where I start thinking, well, almost nobody knows how to do math. And I start reinforcing that within myself. Well, I actually tried an experiment one time with my wife who will tell you that she is not good at math. So again, here's the little thing playing out. I did an experiment one time when I said in my own head, I'm going to turn that around for today. For today, I'm going to say my wife is good at math. I'm just going to keep thinking she's good at math. And do you know that day, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it had something to do with the bookkeeping for the business. And bookkeeping and Louise are two words that normally do not appear in the same sentence. Louise actually went out of her way to resolve an issue with bookkeeping. It was a fairly easy one for someone who knew math to do. It was not easy for somebody who didn't know math, and she snapped it right out. I thought, dang, it's not just what we do to ourselves, it's what we do to others when we put
Really?
false
Seriously?
assumptions out there.
Well, I think about, I homeschooled my boys when they were younger, and I think about the presumptions that we make, or the characterizations that we give, like you said, to someone else.
Mm-hmm.
Like you're saying, oh, I'm good at math, but my wife isn't good at math. Or when we say, oh, well, I remember another mother that was homeschooling her child. This was, 25 years ago, said he's just not good at reading and he just struggles so much. And her child was like 6 or 7. And I said, he'll get it. He'll get it. Just know in yourself that he's going to get it.
Yeah. And,
I saw her a week later and she said, oh my goodness, like he's reading everything in sight. Like he's like, she said, he got it. That's all I was telling her, is that it will click.
Right.
It will, at some point it's just going to click.
Exactly.
And I think that part of helping that process is our own confidence in other people.
Yes. In a big way.
Instead of thinking, oh, they can't, I think I've talked about this before with the way I hold space for a client. Is it, if I'm thinking to myself, oh, this client, they're terrible at this and that, and they're just never going to make it. Well, they certainly won't, not with me as their coach. If I can't hold the vision for them to be successful in whatever it is. And so you're right. We're all connected, right? And so our energy and our thoughts, yeah.
Confidence is contagious. It really is.
And that feels like a big responsibility, right? It's one thing for me to part of it is just being able to see the best in everyone, I think.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Okay, so Neville says the only way to change your expressions of life is to change your consciousness. And those levels of energy we were talking about, that's consciousness we're talking about.
Right.
Right? Because I will tell you, I said this to somebody the other day. I have spoken to people that had very little and they were very happy with their life. They did not feel like they were in any kind of scarcity. They felt like, no, I have everything I need and more, and everything I need always shows up. Like, I'm good. I've also coached people that were multimillionaires that were always saying, money is so tight, I just don't know what to do. I don't know where it's coming from, right? Yeah. And I'm using this example to say, if you swapped places, the multimillionaire would be saying, oh my goodness, they live on how much money? No, that's impossible. And the other person would be saying, oh my goodness, like, right? Like, I'll never want for anything again. That's so much, but it's all perception.
It's a particularly interesting perception too, because we're taught that what we focus on becomes our predominant vibration, and we attract similar stuff of similar vibration. So it raises the question, well, if you have this multimillionaire who has this mentality of scarcity and lack, how the hell did they become a multimillionaire?
Well, life on Earth is complicated sometimes. And here's the thing, is that how much more might they have, or how much more abundance might they have? Because abundance includes peace and health, right? Because what good is it to be a multimillionaire if you're still stressed out about money all the time? So the point I'm making is that what Neville says here is the only way to change your expressions of life is to change your consciousness. That's about consciousness.
I want to answer my own question too, because I didn't raise it just to be difficult. I actually had a reason to raise it. And that is, we are, like you said, complex beings. We aren't always X. We aren't always of a poor mindset. We aren't always of an unhealthy mindset. We aren't always of a wealthy mindset. We change, we shift, we adapt mindsets from moment to moment. Some of them we carry through for weeks and months and years at a time. Others we drop at the drop of a hat.
Right. Right. That's why when I describe the energy levels, I'm always careful to say, look, we've all experienced all of these.
Exactly.
Really easy when we're in the higher energy level and feeling good to suddenly get all judgy at other people. Oh, Debbie Downer over there, right? And oh, they're in victim mode and all of this. Yeah, well, you've been there too. It's like we've all been there. We don't want to get stuck down there. That's for certain.
And how did the multimillionaire become the millionaire in the first place? Because he didn't stay in that vibration at all times. He was at times, or she was at times, in the vibration of wealth, and they stayed there long enough to become a multimillionaire.
Right. Some people are born into money.
Yep.
Right. And when you think about it, if you were a baby born into a wealthy family, you would be born into that vibration.
Sure.
That vibration would feel pretty natural to you.
Absolutely, it would. Yeah.
Remember, I told a story about a friend of mine, also a coach, a fantastic coach, who told a story about when, before she was a coach, when she worked in the financial industry, and that, somebody told her, somebody way above her said, I'm putting you in for this position. You could possibly get this huge promotion. And she started saying, wow. And then all of a sudden she said she had these thoughts like, ooh, those people that work in that department, that made a lot more money than she did. She made good money. They made great money, right? And she said, oh, I bet they don't wear jeans. They probably wear khakis on the weekend. I bet they don't drink beer. They probably drink some fancy cocktail, right? She had all these ideas. And I think that's what we all do. We have these presumptions about the way things are. And those things can limit us because we're like, oh, no, that's different than what I am. Right here we go with the I am statement. It's like, that's not what I am. Right?
Yep.
Yeah. So Neville says that the only way to change our expressions of life is to change our consciousness. He goes on to say, for consciousness is the reality that eternally solidifies itself in the things around you or about you, he says. Round about you, he says. Consciousness is the reality that eternally solidifies itself in the things round about you. Remember, we say this all the time. You want to know what you're thinking? You want to know what your beliefs are? You want to see where your consciousness is? Just look around.
Exactly.
Look around your house. Look at your situation.
Yep.
Man's world in its every detail is consciousness outpictured. You can no more change your environment or world by destroying things than you can your reflection by destroying the mirror. Your environment and all within it reflects that which you are in consciousness. So that's a hermetic principle. As within, so without. As long as you continue to be in that consciousness, so long will you continue to outpicture it in your world. Knowing this, begin to revalue yourself. I love that he uses this word because we don't hear it too often. Revalue. Man has placed too little value upon himself.
Very true.
In the book of Numbers, you will read, in that day there were giants in the land, and we were in our own sight as grasshoppers, and we were in their sight as grasshoppers. This does not mean a time in the dim past when man had the stature of giants. Today is the day, the eternal now, when conditions round about you have attained the appearance of giants, such as unemployed, the armies of your enemy, your problems, all things that seem to threaten you. Those are the giant that make you feel yourself to be a grasshopper. But you are told you were first in your own sight a grasshopper. And because of this, you were to the giants a grasshopper. That's really powerful. It's just reminder. Like, yeah. And it's just like what you were talking about, right? Like if your wife has a story about herself that she says all the time, I'm not good at math, that's what we're all going to think. Same with us. Whatever we go around, the story we tell and the outpicturing that happens because of it, other people see, and then they draw their conclusion. Yeah. So Neville says, in other words, you can only be to others what you are first to yourself. Therefore, to revalue yourself and begin to feel yourself to be the giant, a center of power, is to dwarf these former giants and make of them grasshoppers. And he quotes, all the inhabitants of the earth are as nothing, and he doeth according to his will in the armies of heaven, and among all the inhabitants of the earth, and none can stay his hand, nor say unto him, what doest thou? This being spoken of is not the orthodox God sitting in space, but the one and only God, the everlasting Father, your awareness of being. So awake to the power that you are. not as man, but as your true self, a faceless, formless awareness, and free yourself from your self-imposed prison. He goes on to quote, I am the good shepherd and know my sheep and am known of mine. My sheep hear my voice and I know them and they will follow me. Awareness, says Neville, is the good shepherd. What I am aware of being is the sheep that follow me. So a good shepherd is your awareness that it's never lost one of the sheep that you are aware of being. Any thoughts?
That's so straightforward. I don't have anything to add to it.
All right. Just want to make sure I'm not, just kind of rolling through this without, if you have a comment.
I've been exposed so often through my Christian upbringing to the concept of sheep and shepherds that it just makes sense. But I mean, we could dissect it a little bit if you want, but it just seems straightforward to me.
It is pretty straightforward. And I like the metaphor, right? Because the shepherd takes care of the sheep,
mm-hmm.
and the shepherd protects them and leads them. And so if our shepherd is our awareness, then it's going to take care of us. And the awareness is the consciousness that we're at, the level, being aware of that level, being aware of the stories we tell,
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
being aware of what's outpictured.
Right. Yep.
And that sounds, pretty straightforward. Like, well, how would I not be aware of it? But you'd be surprised at how many times, life gets busy, and so many times I will see something before a client sees it, but it's because I'm standing on the outside. It's easy for me to see. Sometimes we're too close to things to see.
Mm-hmm.
But if we will make the intention to open our awareness and be able to take a look at it, some of it is that we just don't open our awareness to it. We don't make an intention to know what level our consciousness is at. We don't listen to our own stories. We've heard them so many times, we just say them on autopilot.
That we have.
All right. Let's see where Neville goes after this. He says, I am a voice calling in the wilderness of human confusion, for such as I am aware of being. And never shall there come a time when that which I am convinced that I am shall fail to find me. I am is an open door for all that I am to enter. Your awareness of being Lord and shepherd of your life. So the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want, is seen in its true light now to be your consciousness. You can never be in want of proof or lack the evidence of that which you are aware of being. This being true, why not become aware of being great? God-loving, wealthy, healthy, all attributes that you admire. It is just as easy. Why not? Neville is saying, it reminds me of the Abraham Hicks idea that's just as easy to create a button as it is a castle.
Mm-hmm.
It's like we are creating these buttons all day long. Why don't we just make a castle?
This is true.
Neville says, that being true, why not become aware of being great?
Yeah. It's an example of what he's talking about earlier, that we don't give ourselves enough credit. It's the modern way of it.
We don't value ourselves high enough. Yeah.
We are actually pretty powerful. Louis D'Souza told a fabulous story about it. He was talking about it in terms of the context of out-of-body experiences. But he had an out-of-body experience where he found himself in the middle of a stream of source energy. And it was like being under a huge waterfall. It was just such a powerful stream that was just flowing through him. It gave him a real strong personal indication of just how powerful that stream is. Well, we are that stream.
It reminds me of some of Neville's experiences that he talks about when he's in a deep meditation, where it's just, very, so powerful it's hard to put into words kind of things. Yeah. So Neville says it's just as easy to possess the consciousness of these qualities as it is to possess their opposites, for you have not your present consciousness because of your world. On the contrary, your world is what it is because of your present consciousness. Simple, is it not? Too simple, in fact, for the wisdom of man that tries to complicate everything. Paul said of this principle.
I got to tell you, I got to interrupt because I just told that story about Louis, and I looked over in the live stream, and who just logged on? Louis D'Souza. Just had to say that.
I love it. I love it. Paul said of this principle, it is to the Greeks, or wisdom of this world, foolishness, and to the Jews, or those who look for signs, a stumbling block, with the result that man continues to walk in darkness rather than awake to the being that he is. Man has so long worshipped the images of his own making that at first he finds this revelation blasphemous, since it spells death to all his previous beliefs in a God apart from himself. That's what we were talking about earlier, right? Mm-hmm. The words that Neville used this about deep within, in your personal deep. This revelation will bring the knowledge that I and my Father are one, but my Father is greater than I. You are one with your present conception of yourself, but you are greater than that which you are at present aware of being. I love that so much. That we are one with our present conception of ourselves, but we are greater than that which we are at present aware of being. So we really, if we can tap into that idea, it goes along with what you were talking about a second ago with revaluing ourselves. If we recognize that whatever our conception of presently is of ourselves, we're greater than that.
It's almost licensed to say, no matter what value you come up with, increase it. Just
keep going.
Keep going.
Keep going.
You still haven't gone high enough. Go higher.
Well, isn't that sort of the nature of nature? Mm-hmm. The nature of nature is to expand. And what's interesting is, you know what they say with animals, they will grow to their environment, right? Like if you put some mice in a terrarium, you know, they're not going to breed until there's 700 mice in that little terrarium. They will breed until it's crowded, but they will stop.
They will stop eventually.
They will stop. I mean, nature expands to its environment. So don't we do that? It's the limitation that we set. That's how far we go. If we recognize we can go further, and we should be doing this, we all should be doing this. We should have continued growth, whatever that means to us. Once we meet a goal, we want to go further, we want to go bigger, we want to do something more. Mm-hmm. And that's the nature of nature. Grow a garden. You'll have to pull the weeds because it wants to keep going.
Expansion is the nature of the universe. I mean, if there's anything we've learned from Abraham Hicks, that's it.
That's it. Okay, so let's see. I keep losing my place here. Before man can attempt to transform his world, he must first lay the foundation. I am the Lord. That is, man's awareness, his consciousness of being is God. Until this is firmly established, so that no suggestion or argument put forward by others can shake it, he will find himself returning to the slavery of his former beliefs. If ye believe not that I am he, ye shall die in your sins. That is, you shall continue to be confused and thwarted until you find the cause of your confusion. Now, let's talk about that for a second, because we need to break out the Neville decoder ring. Mm-hmm. Even in the original language that the Bible was written in, when it talks about sin, it is not talking about some kind of moral failure. It is talking about when you shoot an arrow at a bullseye and you miss the bullseye. Maybe you miss the target altogether. Mm-hmm. That's what sin is. It just means you missed the mark. Right. You went for a certain result and you didn't get it. And so when Neville talks about forgiveness of sin, he's just talking about going and getting the arrow and come back and shooting it again.
Right.
Right. Put it right. Just set it right. And so when he talks here about if ye believe not that I am he, ye shall die in your sins, he's saying that until you realize that your own awareness is the Lord, that your own consciousness is God, that you have the creative power of the universe within you in your personal deep, until you realize that, you're going to continue to shoot arrows that miss the target.
Yes, that's true. You got to re-aim.
Which he says you'll continue to be confused and thwarted.
Mm-hmm.
When you have lifted up the Son of Man, then shall you know that I am he, that is, that I, John Smith, do nothing of myself, but my Father, or that state of consciousness which I am now one with, does the works. When this is realized, every urge and desire that springs within you shall find expression in your world. Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come in to him and sup with him and he with me. The I knocking at the door is the urge. The door is your consciousness. To open the door is to become one with that which is knocking by feeling oneself to be the thing desired. To feel one's desire is impossible is to shut the door or deny this urge expression. To rise in consciousness to the naturalness of the thing felt is to swing wide the door and invite this one into embodiment. And I think that, right here, Neville's using a lot of verses from the Christian Bible. He's using a lot of very old-fashioned language.
Right.
But in a nutshell, what he is saying is that when you have a desire, if you will look at that desire as that's the knock on the door, and the door is the door of your consciousness, if you will open to it and recognize that you have that power, then that thing is going to enter in, and you will be able to embody that state of being. I always think about, we talk about be, do, and have. What do you want to be? What do you want to do? What do you want to have? But the doing and the having, they're all connected to the being.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Okay.
Yeah, you really can't have the one without, or the two without the one, rather.
Yeah, it all stems from that one thing, and that is the state of being. Mm. All right. So Neville says that's why it's constantly recorded that Jesus left the world of manifestation and ascended unto his Father. Jesus, as you and I, found all things impossible to Jesus as man, but having discovered his Father to be the state of consciousness of the thing desired, he but left behind him the Jesus consciousness and rose in consciousness to that state desired and stood upon it until he became one with it. And as he made himself one with that, he became that in expression. Now, remember here, when you hear all of these verses from Neville, that Neville does not consider the Christian Bible to be a historical record of anything.
Right.
He considers it to be a psychological drama that we can step right into, that we can apply to our own way of being today. And so whether you believe it's a historical record or not, when you're reading Neville, it's a metaphor. And to understand what Neville's teaching, it has to be looked at that way. Yes. So in the container of reading Neville, you can look at it that way, even if you want to look at it differently some other time. But when you're with Neville, this is how he's teaching it. And it's very important that you're willing to understand it the way he's teaching it, or you just won't get anything he's saying.
And I'm reminded of something because of Louis dropping into the live stream. Because
hi, Louis.
Louis, by the way, he says hello. He often makes the point on the Monday podcast that the reason he loves Abraham so much is because it's so simple. I mean, Neville, let's be perfectly honest. Neville goes through all this stuff to get to the very simple points that Abraham names in about a sentence. And it's true. I mean, that's exactly what happens. The one thing that I think a lot of people find value in Neville in is that Neville talks in the biblical language, basically. Mm-hmm. And he explains biblical concepts in a way that's different from the way the church teaches them, and helps basically lead those who are still kind of tied up in that whole mindset toward what the real enlightenment is, toward what the real idea is. So I guess it's my way of saying it's different strokes for different folks. I mean, I tend to agree with Louis. I like the simplicity of Abraham, but that simplicity can actually be confusing to some people. So guiding them this way is actually the easier way for some people.
I remember hearing Abraham say something about, well, you tell us that you want more information, then we give it to you, and you say it's complicated and confusing. So we tell you, okay, it's just this one thing, and you say, no, I need more than that. That's bigger than that. So, yes. So the thing I really think is valuable about Neville and his metaphors and his teachings here is that a lot of these ideas, many of us have heard for decades.
Yeah.
A lot of these verses and these words, and we may have the sense that they're important and that they have something important to say.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And Neville's like, here's why it's important. This is talking about you, right? It's not outside of you. It's within you. To me, that's valuable.
I think so. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So let's
we're on the last paragraph.
We are. Okay. This is Jesus' simple message to man. Men are but garments that the impersonal being, I am, the presence that men call God, dwells in. Each garment has certain limitations. In order to transcend these limitations and give expression to that which, as man, John Smith, you find yourself incapable of doing, you take away your attention from your present limitations, or the John Smith conception of yourself, and merge yourself in the feeling of being that which you desire. Just how this desire or newly attained consciousness will embody itself, no man knows. For I, or the newly attained consciousness, has ways that ye know not of. Its ways are past finding out. Do not speculate as to the how of this consciousness embodying itself, for no man is wise enough to know the how. Speculation is proof that you have not attained to the naturalness of being the thing desired, and so are filled with doubts.
I hear you read that, and I keep hearing Mike Dooley saying, avoid the horrible hows.
Avoid the horrible hows. Right there at the end of the paragraph we just read, where he talks about if we find ourselves incapable of doing, then we take our attention away from our present limitations. And he's talking about the body being like a garment for God to dwell in. Then he goes on talking about not speculating of how. But what I think is really important is that there are tricks, there are things that you can do to help that embodiment along. In other words, I remember asking a client one time, she said she wanted to be a well-funded retiree. And I said, okay. So how does a well-funded retiree do her laundry?
Yes.
Meaning physically, like in other words, you will embody your physical self differently if you think of yourself as that being that you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
It may not show up to anyone else, but if you notice someone that's very confident, they don't walk into a room all slumped over with their head down.
True. Right?
If someone walks into the room all slumped over with their head down, what do we immediately think? Oh no, what's wrong?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
And so this is why, going into like a job interview or something, we want to embody what we think that new boss might be looking for. Oh, he wants someone that's dressed a certain way. He wants us to be confident. We should speak like we have knowledge of the topic, And so when we start adopting those things, that will help us move into that space of being able to embody whatever it is. I think it's important to recognize that what Neville is saying about consciousness is number one, but we can do things in our physical life to move that consciousness along, to support our actions in embodying that in a conscious way. It can be clothes, it can be our environment, it can be just the way we do something. Like I said to her, how does a well-funded retiree throw those towels into the dryer? Ask yourself that as you're doing it.
Mm-hmm.
No one else is, you're going to still go through your day doing the same things that you're doing now, but ask yourself, well, how would I be doing this?
And that's when you're shifting your perspective. You're changing your perspective to that of a person who is.
And I'm I'm not talking about the hows in the way of, oh, well, how am I going to become wealthy, or how is my book going to become a bestseller? I don't mean that kind of how, because we don't know how those things happen. But it's the things I'm doing physically. How would I do them? If I pretended that I was this person, this being, and that's all it really is in consciousness, right? Is you can ask any actor. Any actor who is becoming a certain character on the stage.
And this is really what Neville was talking about in the middle of this part of the book, where he was talking about man being in a land of giants. That we treat ourselves as if we're the grasshoppers within the land of giants. We can change that perception. We can change that perspective until we get to the point that they're the grasshoppers and we're the giants. And it's all a matter of perspective. And
that they're not going to see us as grasshoppers unless we see ourselves that way first.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. That way, everything stems from our own consciousness. It's all just a big reflection of who we are, of who we perceive ourselves to be, because it's not really who we are. We are greater than what we're perceiving.
That's probably the biggest message to take away from this part of the book, for me anyway.
I think so too.
We really can't overstate how powerful we really are. Yeah. There's not a way to do that. It's kind of mind-boggling because we're so used to thinking the other way around, but there really is no way to overstate it. We are immensely powerful beings.
Yeah, and just like anything else that we, like we talk about the emotional scale, that it's nearly impossible for anybody to jump from that level 1 victim energy up to that level 7 turn water into wine energy in a heartbeat. And if you look at the emotional scale, it's nearly impossible to go from deep depression to unbounded joy, in 1 minute. It's too much of a jump. So in the same way, when we recognize I am greater than the me I'm perceiving, I am vastly different than the me that I'm perceiving. I have so many limits in this me that I'm perceiving, and I am so much greater than that. We can push those limits just a little bit. We can imagine something a little bigger.
And that's what we
have to be, something that we can't fathom.
So nice to have an easy way to get there. I just keep thinking, wow, I'm more powerful than I thought. I'm more powerful than I thought.
Yeah, right? Right. And I don't know how.
I don't have to know how.
I don't know how, but I know I'm more powerful than I thought I was.
It's not my job to know how. My only job is to know that I am. I am that I am.
I am that I am.
Yeah. And I am also making sure that I am downloading the LOA Today app. How's that for a transition?
Please download the LOA Today app.
Which people are doing, and I'm glad that they're doing it. The next step is to keep using the app, and we're putting all this great stuff, including Cindy's ebook, The Lovely Magician's Guide to Soulmate Success. It's already on there, and more stuff to come, in addition to Dan Mangaina's ebook and his audio course, and more stuff coming. But beyond that, I want you to share. I want other people to find out about the LOA Today app. So let's take this particular episode here. If you're listening, you're probably a Neville fan. Tell some other Neville fans about it. Tell them about the LOA Today app. Tell a friend to tell a friend, as Alex likes to say. Yeah. Please do. That's how the word gets around. Thank you, Cindy. This has been great. Thank you for all the insights as usual.
Of course.
You're good at this stuff. You're really good at it.
I'm a big Neville fan, so.
That's a good thing, too. Yeah. Thank you very much to live streamers. Thanks for dropping in, Louie. Good to see you. We'll look forward to talking on Monday. And thank especially to all of our podcast listeners as well, because without you, we wouldn't have a podcast. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.